Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is May 13, Thursday, 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and this is Professor Hamamoto today. And we have a very special piece for you today. It's on Johnny Carson and The Tonight Show that ran for 30 years, 30 long years. I have the exact date here, 1962 to 1992. And to make it even more special of an event, I have a guest here. He's a friend that I made way back in junior high school, Brookhurst Junior High School, to be specific. And he's going to be providing some guest commentary here. We lived through a good chunk of The Tonight Show, and we are children of the television age, just as our parents were the children of radio and movies. We were the first full generation to have been born into this brave new world of the lobotomy box or the YouTube. Um, I'll also be adding a little bit of some quips, some personal anecdotes that concern my involvement to the Tonight Show. Not only was I a longtime audience member, for example, but in the very last week of the Tonight Show, not the last show, but I think it was on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, I was able to attend the show with a friend of mine. I wrote to the producers of the Tonight Show after I heard the news that Johnny Carson, after 30 years, was going to retire. I wrote a nice long letter about what the Tonight Show meant to me and what Johnny Carson represented so far as American culture is concerned and American history, really, because as you know, he commented on the events of the day. And much to my surprise, in the mail, I got back 2 complimentary passes to the Tonight Show. And I got in and sat, and I remember only one guest. It was Farrah Fawcett. So that's my experience with it, except for the fact that I did meet one of the writers of the Tonight Show, because Johnny Carson had a large stable of highly competent, and skilled, and experienced writers. He knew as a master comedian that it all starts in the writing. And this individual's name was Mel Tolkien, Tolkin, and he had started in the golden age of television. He was one of the writers for Sid Caesar's show, Your Show of Shows. And I believe a figure by the name of Woody Allen got his start there as well, his first major start. So that's Mel Tolkien. And his son as well was a writer and had done some screenplays and some novels. So that's my personal experience with the Johnny Carson show, The Tonight Show. And after this introduction, I'd like to bring in my dear friend, Howard L. Wilson. He is a writer, specializes in autobiographical fiction, and I had a good time reading his reminiscences of our childhood, really, but filtered through his lens, of course. But I saw a lot of points of recognition there. So that's Howard L. Wilson from Brookhurst Junior High School all the way to Savannah High School, and you may remember him from a November cast. It wasn't a live cast like this one, but we sat down and talked about the Kennedy assassination. That is the John F. Kennedy assassination. Because, again, it was one of those milestones in not just our own lives, but the history of America and the world. So you'll recognize him. But today we have the great privilege of having Howard L. Wilson with us here to speak with us live. Howard, how are you doing?
Darrell, I'm very grateful that you allow me on your program for its premiere episode. And I'm really looking forward to talking about Johnny Carson and late night talk shows and the whole gamut. Growing up in the TV generation had a big impact on me, like it did on all of us. And I have fond memories of watching The Tonight Show and the other talk shows from the era. And again, thank you for allowing me on your show. It's an honor and a privilege.
Well, you're welcome. I'm honored as well. And the reason I invited you in is because growing up, I always admired and respected your critical intelligence. none of this was passing through you, even when we were as junior high school kids. And I think that's why we were friends. Both of us sort of enjoyed an ironic distance from all of the teenage insanity that was going around
Yeah.
amongst us. So,
The- the-
we're gonna do it from the other end of the telescope.
yes, yes.
And Howard, were you like me? Did you watch the monologue every day, every
Well,
night?
matter of fact, because when it first started, I mean, I was just a kid, and my bedtime was 9 o'clock, or sometimes lately at 10 o'clock, unless it was during summer vacation. I never got much of a chance to watch it until I got into my late teens, when I was in college, and then I could watch it. And yeah, it was pretty much every night, if not at my house, because we had more than one TV by that time. It would be over at a friend's house. We had a friend in Cyprus who was living at his grandmother's place. You remember our friend Dominic, and we would sit, and at the end of the evening, we'd be all kind of lounging in front of the TV set, and we would be watching Carson, or if commercials would cut over to Dick Cavett or something, or watch some other program. But a lot of his time was spent watching Carson, and a big hit would be if Rodney Dangerfield was on, for instance, because he was always a lot of fun, and he was a regular guest on the Carson show.
Wow. Yeah, Carson was very much in tune with comedians. And of course, he is really a fellow comedian, and much more than that. He started out as a magician when he was a kid back in Iowa, but he had a very special knack with people like Rodney Dangerfield.
Right.
And people, some up and coming people. He made a lot of careers, like Jay Leno, for example, who later on became the host of The Tonight Show. And then Joan Rivers, that he had a falling out with. Maybe we can go into that a little bit later. Yeah. And I'm mentioning her name because next week I'll be doing a talk on Joan Rivers and her kind of dark story, not just how she died, but there's something more about that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just giving a little bit of a preview there. Howard, you're a writer yourself. What do you think about the craftsmanship of the monologue?
It was always spot on. It was intelligent. It wasn't overtly political. It would take jabs at any politician. It didn't favor one over the other, which was really good in those days. Something that we could certainly deal with now. And it was just plain funny. And not only was the writing itself funny, but of course Carson's delivery was always funny. I mean, he was just, and of course he had his little quirks that were funny in themselves. Like the way he would respond if a joke didn't go over well. He was just always a funny guy. And I remember him initially, even before, when I was a little kid, when Jack Parr was still hosting The Tonight Show in the late 50s, early 60s. Johnny Carson was the host of a TV series called, what was it called? Doggone it. Good old memory here. Who Do You Trust?
Right, with Ed McMahon.
Right. And he was the he had replaced Edgar Bergen as the host, and so he was the host of this game show, and he was always really funny. And I remember all my brothers and sisters, we would just watch it just to see Carson. I don't remember anything else about the program other than the fact that he was on, and he was always very funny.
Okay, pop quiz. Who was the first host of The Tonight Show?
Steve Allen.
Great. See, that's another reason why I'm having you here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the type of conversations we'd have in between classes, at Brookhurst Junior High School, about what was on a TV the previous night, or what we were going to watch that later that day. So, who were some of your favorite routines there with Carson doing the routines?
Well, there was also Karnak, the mind reader, or the whatever Karnak was, the turban.
Karnak the Magnificent.
Yeah, Karnak the Magnificent. Thank you. Those were good. I always liked the ones with the buxom girl. What was her name? And when he would be doing those routines. Oh God.
Joyce DeWitt?
No, it wasn't Joyce DeWitt. It was, and then she was apparently, I think she died in a drowning accident. It was replaced by another comedian. Well,
It's horrible.
I should have studied up on it.
No, it's not necessary.
I know. I'm just kidding.
But you mentioned the Karnak the Magnificent.
Yeah.
Let me, if I may, if you'll indulge me for a moment, make an attempt at that. The answer is Tony Fauci. Let me see here. What do you call a high-class war criminal?
I love it.
I'm sorry, Howard. That's a little bit dark for what we're doing. If I was going, wait, can you indulge me with one more?
Yes.
Okay. The answer is Gates Bill. Let's see here. What do you call an invoice with the death heads on it?
Very good. Very good.
Well, this is where, at the moment, where I'd go into my gyrations if a joke falls flat. He always managed to make it work, right?
Always.
When there was a deafening silence, it was still funny. Now,
go ahead.
No, go, please.
He would have his rejoinder and say, "May a million fleas nestle in your pubic hair," or something of that sort.
I forgot about that. Excellent. And what about the great unforgotten man? You know who I'm referring to?
Ed McMahon.
Speak to Ed McMahon.
Yes. There was I don't know where I saw it. It was a cartoon. It was actually a picture of Whistler's mother. They took the painting Whistler's mother, painted in a television set so that her eyes were pointing towards the television set. And then they put a word balloon over her head saying, "That Ed McMahon just cracks me up." I had that image in my head for some reason. And then he'd do his Budweiser commercials.
Absolutely. Now, what were some of the, because Budweiser was a national brand, what were some of the local, I think was it NBC that we were on, Channel 4?
Yeah, it was on NBC, yeah. So it would have been KNBC in the LA Orange County market. KNBC
in the LA and Orange market. What were some of the local merchants that you remember? The real cheesy commercials that were
Zacharial, which was a tailor, and then there was Lee's Barstools and Dinettes. I do remember there was a Lee's Barstool and Dinettes commercial where they had this girl walking through the factory or something, and she was obviously buxom and unfettered, you might say. So it would always draw the attention of all the guys that she was kind of flopping around through taking a tour of the facility, so to speak. So we always look forward to that commercial.
Well, yeah, remember, this is late night television. Late night television, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about 11:30 p.m. up until 1 o'clock. And of course, the hours changed, as the contract was renegotiated. But yes, Howard?
Yeah, it was also in the late 60s, early 70s where that was the fashion, the unfettered fashion of the times.
Absolutely. And you're talking about unfettered. And your earlier comments alluded to how we've fallen away from that kind of humor today in 2021.
Indeed.
Could you speak to that issue?
Yeah, it's not even worth the effort of turning on the set to watch any of the talk shows of today, because the humor is gone. It's been canceled, so to speak. You don't get the jokes at all out of Jimmy Kimmel. If they are, they're flatter than something that would not even need to be fettered at this point. Mm-hmm. Flat as a pancake. Can't even name any of the other guys. I mean, I turn them on and I think, ho hum. I'm going to watch reruns of Forensic Files, even if I've seen it 15 times. I'm going to watch another one of those over watching any of the talk shows that are on now. It's
wow.
A totally different world.
Sadly, Howard, I agree with you there. Stephen Colbert has to be added to that list.
Right.
And they have these people who are from the Five Eyes. They're from part of the larger British Commonwealth, because I think it's part of a psyop, right, to demoralize the American people.
Yeah.
But there's this guy, Noah, what's his name, from South Africa. They used to call them coloreds, people who were mixed race. I forgot his name, Noah, whatever his name. He's on American television and talking, making humor. How can it be funny? Humor requires some understanding and lived experience about the culture.
And irony.
And irony. How can you get into irony if you're not an American?
Yeah.
Tell me. You're the humorist.
Well, the difficulty is that the importance of irony. I think Jessamine West had said it. The more important than a sense of humor is a sense of irony, because with a sense of irony, you understand the joke that's on yourself. And if you cannot laugh at yourself, then you're in a miserable position, because the biggest joke in the world is your own personal self.
And you know what? That's what these guys are missing. This current crop of quote unquote late night talk shows who are supposed to be comedians, they can't laugh at themselves.
No.
What happened? Because you mentioned the word cancel earlier. What happened to these guys or the networks?
They've embraced the cancel culture completely. So you step out of line and the man comes and takes you away. Essentially is what the world is like right now.
And you're quoting from what song?
For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield. A hit record during our junior high days.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. See, this was our Homer. This was our Aeschylus. All these people who are now being dumped on for being part of some sort of CIA psyops. Howard and me, we were listening to these songs and breaking them apart. And we are still referencing them in order to understand the contemporary oppression of 2021. Wow, Howard. I remember that 33, and I remember you playing it on your parents' stereo. Right. They had a nice one, which is why that wasn't the reason why I wanted to come over. I wanted to hang out with you, but the stereo system was an attraction.
It was a nice big one, yeah.
It was a blonde made out of real wood, right? Was it blonde or was it mahogany?
I think it was plywood with veneer, but it was still really good.
It was still, yeah. I mean,
it had burgundy speaker covers.
Yeah. So this
it was a TV stereo console.
Please explain. It's a combination, right?
Yeah, combination. It had a TV right in the middle, and then you had the two side speakers, which would work for both the television set and the stereo. And then off to the side where the TV set was located, off the side was you lift the lid and you put the records in it.
Mm-hmm. Big ladies and gentlemen, pardon me?
Big 12-inch LPs on a record changer.
That's right, including the Buffalo Springfield and one of our favorites from Joni Mitchell, Blue.
Right.
That was the great record. But at the same time, we were, these were very profound pieces of art and popular culture as well. But we were also, I believe, learning quite a bit from what appeared to be just sort of inane type of hijinks late at night. I don't know about you, but I thought Johnny Carson's, monologues were quite perceptive about contemporary politics. Again, like you mentioned, without really stepping on anybody's toes overtly.
Yeah, and if there was any toe stepping, mostly you took it in stride. I do remember an occasion, for instance, we were over at Nick's Grammys in Cyprus, and during a break in Carson, we switched it over to Dick Cavett. And interestingly enough, he had two guys on it. Cavett's show was generally a lot more serious. Number one, because Cavett wasn't funny as a monologuist, and two, he would probably inject a little bit more serious business in his show. And this was a show. There was an interesting program. If I can tell the whole story, there were these at the end of World War II. There was this minuscule little atoll out in the Pacific, and sometime in early '46, we went over there and rescued the last Marine on that atoll. And at the same time, there was this soldier from the Empire of Japan, and they were the only two guys on the island, and they didn't know that the war was over. So they were both rescued. The Japanese gentleman was repatriated to Japan. American came home. So 25 years later, they're both on the Cavett show to talk about their experiences and what it was like. So anyways, after that, we listened to that. We switched back over to the Carson show, and Andy Williams was on, of all people. It's not somebody I would want to listen to any great length. But he was singing all these different language versions of the theme to Love Story. Where do I begin to tell the story? And he started singing it in different languages like French, Italian, and he sang it in Japanese. And Johnny Carson says, "That's Japanese? I thought Japanese." And he went into this sort of stereotype version of what people think Japanese sounds like, which sounded like a cross between Chinese and Vietnamese. But in any event, we kind of looked at that and thought, that's kind of strange, the contrast the two programs. After it was all over, I can't imagine anybody writing to the station and saying, okay, we can't watch Johnny Carson anymore because he was making fun of the Japanese language. It was different then. Nobody really worried too much about that because nobody was so dang sensitive about things like that.
Well, that's absolutely true. This, I think what you called or what is known as the cancel culture itself has been institutionalized, maybe by these same entities that are bringing us people like Stephen Colbert or Noah, whatever his name is, or Jimmy Kimmel. I think it probably comes out of the same faucet, if I may.
Yeah, I tend to think so.
All right. Now, you grew up in Orange County and I grew up in Orange County. And back when we were coming up, Orange County was synonymous for right-wing extremism.
Yeah.
And I remember one joke in particular, I thought was funny at the time, that because his writers were typically liberal, right? Johnny Carson, they followed him out from New York, and they were probably justifiably so horrified by the McCarthy years, and maybe they hadn't been on the blacklist for all we know. They were of that generation.
Yeah.
So I remember in the monologue once he referred to a company in Orange County, California, that made wooden toilet seats. And it was called the Birch John Society.
That's a good one.
It still makes you chuckle after all these years.
Of course. And John
even
Birch,
the way I mangled it, it's still funny.
Yeah. Well, then they were right-wing extremists, to be sure. But the thing is that there was still a lot of freedom even in Orange County. And I went through a radical period from ninth grade through high school and didn't start realizing that what I thought was real wasn't real by the time I was in college. So I went through a period of time where I went through the radical period and got out of it as I started living in the real world. But I never really felt like I was oppressed in Orange County, just living there. And I always rarely went into LA County. I was perfectly happy living in Anaheim and later Fullerton. So just a different world back then.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the, I think, genius aspects of the Tonight Show was that Johnny Carson was able to straddle all these different political cultures around the country. It still is diverse. If we watch CNN, you think it's just us versus them, but regionally there's a great deal of diversity. So you read about people who were in the military and high levels of government and the counterculture type people. Not only would they be listening to Johnny Carson late at night, but some of them, they'd be on his show. It was a mishmash. So part of the counterculture, or I'm sorry, the cancel culture today would never have certain types of individuals on there. It didn't matter to Johnny Carson. And he was working for NBC Network.
Yeah, you could have Sergeant Barry Sadler on there. He was the guy who sang Ballad of the Green Berets, which was a big hit in '66. Yeah, he would go on the Carson show, and he probably would be on the show, would sing the song, and nobody would think anything about it. Or you could have Jefferson Airplane on there, and it wasn't you could put anything on a show, whether if you like it. I mean, there were certain aspects that might have been removed. Anybody went too extreme to the right or left, and you could forget about that. But in most cases, liberals, conservatives could be on the same show at the same time and shake hands and walk off. It wasn't the same way it is today. Absolutely.
That was one of the beauties of it. And it brought us together as Americans, I think, as, hey, we have our differences, but let's find the humorous aspect and the absurdity
let's observe
that underlies it all, huh?
Let's observe common courtesy, essentially.
That too, common courtesy, and we'll talk it out. And Johnny Carson was the the perfect host from that. Maybe it was because of his Midwestern upbringing. He was just a very polite gentleman, and
Yeah.
that's just the culture out there, having lived there for a short time myself. What about some of the the quirky type animal oriented acts? Were
I
you
remember
into?
those. Yeah, they're ones that commonly show clips from on the Time Life Johnny Carson collection they used to have a few years ago,
Mhm.
where there would be a sloth or something crawling around on his head. I always loved those. There was somebody from, I think it was from the LA Zoo or one of those places. Then they
San
would bring
Diego Zoo. San Diego.
San Diego Zoo.
That
That's what.
woman, I forgot her name. Yeah.
Yeah, and of
Someone in
course,
the comments will remember. Yeah.
yeah, and she would come in and
Joan Embry.
Joan Embry.
All
That's
of a
what it
sudden
was.
it came back. There you go.
Yeah,
San
she'd bring
Diego.
some animal in, and he would look into the cage, and all of a sudden this Wolverine or something would start, attacking the cage, and he would jump back and have this look on his face. It was always a lot of fun.
And how do you rate Johnny Carson as a sketch artist? You know, these skits that he would do with let's say Betty White or something. How do you rank him so far as that's concerned?
I would say he was really good. It's hard to set a scale of excellent, priceless, that sort of thing. But they were always entertaining, and of course they always had the cooperation of the participants. Everybody looked like they were having as much fun doing it as we were having watching it. So just a
Mhm.
lot of fun.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you, Howard, have done any biographical reading on Johnny Carson. I'm into celebrity bios myself, and I
Yeah,
came
I have
across
not
one.
actually.
Pardon me?
I have not. I know he grew up in the Midwest, but
Mhm.
just sketchy stuff that you read about,
Well, do you
in that.
remember his in his monologues or his asides? He would mention bombastic Bushkin,
Just vaguely.
his lawyer. He
Yeah,
would
honestly,
he would reference his lawyer. He would reference his wives or ex-wives or
oh,
his
that's right.
divorces,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
he would mention bombastic Bushkin, and that turned out to be Henry Bushkin, who he recruited as his personal attorney when Henry Bushkin was only 27. And he wrote a biography of Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson died in what, 1990? I'm sorry, what was his date?
I think it was towards.
2005.
That's
2005.
what it was.
Johnny
Yeah, I knew
Carson
it
died.
was early in the century.
So he's been, gone for a decade and a half.
Hmm.
But I don't know how long this book came out. I think it's called Here's Johnny. I can't remember the exact title, but it's by Henry Bushkin, who knew Johnny Carson very well. And I read the book and I forgot about it. And it's for those of you who are interested, there's a version of it on YouTube that you can listen to for free. And I was just reminded of the dark aspects of Johnny Carson, the individual. We heard these stories. What was your take on it?
Well, he was married several times, and because he was earning so much on television, that his alimony payments were quite high as well. And I do remember something about it. Every one of his wives' name was Joan. There was always or the names began with a J. I'm not sure if that is an accurate memory, but it has something in my mind that there were Joan, Jane, and Jeannie, or something like that. But I haven't, like I said, I hadn't read the biography, and a lot of the stuff I don't really remember too well.
Okay. Well, you're close. It's I think he married two different women whose names were both Joanne. They were spelled differently, and maybe this is a good occasion to take a look at one of his ex-wives. She seems to have very fond memories of him because not only does Johnny Carson interest me, I'm interested in his wives. I'm interested in women in general, right? You mentioned that one writer who talked about recognizing the ironic nature of our own. What was her name again?
Jessamine West.
Jessamine West. She was from the Midwest, wasn't she, or Kansas?
No, she was from Whittier. No, excuse me, Yorba Linda.
Oh,
She was
oh,
Richard Nixon's second cousin,
oh,
and
oh
she
my
wrote like
gosh.
Friendly Persuasion, South of the Angels. She had gone to Fullerton Junior College, and she had sponsored a creative writing contest at Cal State Fullerton, Fullerton Junior College,
Mhm.
which in 1973 I won the poetry writing contest for that college. Got $20 and spent it on beer and pot. So there's irony for you right there.
I know. Well, I'm glad you were able to present your bona fides. So yeah, Jessamine West,
Yeah.
a woman of letters. So I'm interested in their sensibility. Women's sensibility, their perspective, right? So I found this clip of Joanne Carson talking about her post Johnny Carson years. It's a short piece, and I'd like to run it if I may. And ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to comment over it because the mics don't operate, but we'll perhaps after we watch a minute of this, we can go in on this particular clip. And we have a couple more that will be running soon that's going to be dealing more with the personal side of Johnny Carson, the dark side, if you will. So here's Joanne Carson.
She has an awful lot to talk about, and it's really a delight to welcome Joanne Carson.
Oh, thank you.
Nice to have you here.
This is my second home. I'm delighted to be. There I go. Christmas I spent in Lowell, Massachusetts with the Elides family. They're my second family. So I'm all excited because I'm getting ready to come home for Christmas.
Isn't that great? It was interesting that during the break, Joanne was saying, I'll talk about anything. It doesn't matter. And yet I was feeling a little bit nervous about this business of being Johnny Carson's ex-wife following you for your whole life.
But I know, but we are children of parents that follow us all of our life. We are somebody that belongs to somebody. It doesn't bother me.
Talk about that then. What broke up the marriage, you say, was a health situation, right?
Hypoglycemia. I had hypoglycemia for about 10 years, and I didn't know it, and that's what's really scary about it, because, you walk around, you've got all these strange symptoms, anxiety and the nervousness and the sleeplessness and the depressions and the high-low swings and the stomach upsets, and your whole body and mind, you just think you're coming unglued and they're going to scrape you off of a wall one of these days.
So you didn't get along because of that?
Well, no, we didn't get along. Johnny was very supportive, always wondering what he could do, how he could help, suggesting this doctor, that doctor, and I go to doctors and they say, my dear, I'll give you Valium and sleeping pills, you'll be fine. Or one doctor said, oh, you're just manic depressive, don't worry about it. And you think, I'm really dealing with something that I don't know what I'm dealing with. And not one doctor asked me about my diet, what I was eating, my lifestyle, or anything. So it took about 2 years after the divorce, I finally found out it was hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. And I thought, oh. Had alive and well been on the air 15 years ago, I would still be married today and happily.
She has an awful lot to talk about, and it's really a delight to welcome Joanne.
Wow, that's to me, I found that a fascinating testimonial. Number one, immediately when she went to go see the male doctors, they wanted to put her on some sort of pharmaceutical, right? Whereas it was most likely diet related. But this interview goes on a little bit later. Later, she became a homeopathic doctor herself so that she can help other women. So this is the type of woman that Johnny Carson had been married to. I think his last wife, who was Italian American, was very cultivated and worldly and educated him about fine art and wines and all this. So I depart from the people who say that Johnny Carson could never really get close to women or wasn't in touch with his emotions. I think he might have been so much in touch with his emotions and his feelings and had so much respect for women that, and he was in a position to do so. He had so much respect for women that he wanted to marry any number of them. What's your comment?
Yeah, I would say that's probably a fair assessment. And then keeping in mind that in where he was working, a job like that, being in the public eye like that, is probably a greater strain than most of us can even imagine. And he's working, 5 days a week. He has to go in. I don't know how many hours they spend preparing for the program. I mean, he doesn't just, drive up to the studio at 11:15, walk into the green room and, check his makeup and then move on to the studio and then do it all. It's a lot of work involved in those things. And if you're doing that, it's less time that you have to spend with your family. So I can understand how that could be a strain as well. But in a sense, people say a lot of things about people they don't know. And I'm sure that he's probably a lot more sensitive than people would give him credit for. And then he probably took a lot of frustrations behind the drum kit, because I understand that he was a passionate drummer as a hobby. But
Well,
yeah,
absolutely. I think it was who was it? Buddy Rich, who we really, really liked as a musician.
yeah.
I think Buddy Rich gave him that drum set that Johnny Carson kept in his living room at his home in I guess it was in Malibu. But guess what he did most of the time when he was at home? He was writing. Johnny Carson was a writer. He
Was
was
wow.
prepping for the Tonight Show, just like you alluded. You're a writer, so you know that before any of it hits the page, there's tons and tons and tons of research and experience that go behind it. And I was watching this documentary on Johnny Carson, and he was like an athlete. He's watching tapes of old, previous shows. He's
Hmm.
examining them like game tapes. That's the type of, and that's what made him so. And like you alluded to, people think he just drove in his Jaguar, or whatever it is, luxury in beautiful downtown Burbank, just went on stage and then was on there for an hour and a half, and then collected his money and went home. But
Yeah.
it was quite different than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. It was just he didn't just come up with it. A lot of things are spontaneous as well, like Ed Ames tossing the tomahawk and it landing in the crotch of the dummy, that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, obviously that wasn't scripted. So, but still, yeah, it's an awful lot of work goes into that, and he's obviously working really hard at his craft. I think it's
Mhm.
pretty clear. Nobody's a natural to the extent where they can just walk in there and do that stuff the way he did. No, he was obviously talented, obviously the right man for the job, but he also threw a lot of work into it.
Absolutely. Yet people, and this is not just true for Johnny Carson, but those people who are in the public eye, could be Jay Leno. It might not even mean the world of comedy.
Yeah.
They have this sort of fantasy projection of who these individuals are. And
Mm.
sometimes it takes a kind of a twisted turn. And having said that, Howard, I wonder if you could join me in watching a clip
Yeah.
from the film The King of Comedy, 1982, directed by Martin Scorsese, one of the great living American directors, if not one of the great directors in world cinema. And this is Robert De Niro's, let's leave aside, Robert De Niro's kind of gone sideways on us recently, right?
Yeah.
But in his heyday, he was really good before Dirty Grandpa and Dirty Grandpa 2. Those movies, which I've seen the first one. I have a no sequel policy, so I didn't see the second one. But this is where Robert De Niro is whining and dining a beautiful young woman. And he's Rupert Pupkin.
Rupert
Right.
Pupkin.
So let's take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen, and have Howard comment on.
Really? Wow.
Waiter, can I have a fresh one?
Rita, who is your favorite movie star?
What is this, some kind of a game? No. Huh? You gonna tell me something about my character, my future, what?
Well, you'll see. Tell me. Everybody has a favorite movie star.
Well, I better come up with somebody or we'll never get out of here, right?
That's a little test.
Let's see. Marilyn Monroe.
Perfect.
Talent register, huh? That's her name.
She signed this when she was in New York doing her last publicity tour for the Misfits. That was her last movie,
Yeah.
She wasn't a great actress, but she did have a real gift for comedy. She died tragically alone, like many of the world's most beautiful women. I don't want to see that happening to you.
Who's this?
Burt Reynolds,
Yes.
Mel Brooks. He's what you call on funny. Others are just regular. Oh, that's Sid Caesar. He's remarkable. I really like him. He's great. Woody Allen. He's a very nice guy. He's a personal friend of mine.
Of course he is.
No, he is. Oh, that's Ernie Kovacs. He was wonderful. He was a great comedian, a great innovator. That was a great, great loss.
Well, I bet some of these are worth money.
Oh, yeah. Especially this one. Just hold it.
Who's this?
Well, just take a guess.
God, looks like a retard one.
The more scribbled the name, the bigger the fame.
That may be true, Rupert, but who is it?
R is the first letter.
Come on, Rupert, who is it? I'm tired.
Well, I'll give you a little hint.
Robert Redford.
No. No. That's Rupert Pupkin. Rupert Pupkin. I surprised you, didn't I? Take this as a gift. Take good care of that. In a few weeks, everyone is going to want one.
Rupert, you have not changed.
Just a couple of hours ago, do you know who I was talking to? Guess.
Your shrink?
That's very funny. No, Jerry Langford. That's right, the Jerry Langford. He gave me the go-ahead, Rita. Would you believe it? And you know what? Don't tell anyone yet, but you're looking at the new king of comedy. Why not me? Why not? A guy can get anything he wants as long as he pays the price. What's so funny about that? I mean, crazier things have happened. You don't understand what a shot on Langford means. That's coast-to-coast national TV, a bigger audience than the greatest comedians used to play to in a whole lifetime. A shot at a free ticket on a comedy circuit, a comedy show of my own, the Rupert Pupkin Show, everything. And all that leads in one direction, Rita. Hollywood. A beach house in Malibu, right on the ocean, and we'll keep a suite at the Sherry. Everybody stays there when they make it big. Way up top so we can look down at everybody and yell, hey, tough luck, suckers. Better luck next time. Come on, what do you say?
It sounds wonderful, Rupert. I wish you the best of luck, you know, but it's getting late and I'm a working girl. I gotta go home.
I don't get you. Here I am offering you a way out. Rita, every king needs a queen. I want you to be mine.
Yes, Howard. Your comments without my
the fantasy world. We all see people that we admire, stars, and at some point it gets on our mind. Usually when we're younger. I remember when the Beatles came out in early '64, and we were every single kid in my class in fifth grade was just wanting Beatles, and so there were a few of us said we're going to start a group. And we're going to be the biggest group ever. And we all got none of us had a guitar yet, so we all got tennis rackets out and started strumming the tennis rackets, saying, "Okay, we're going to be bigger than the Beatles." And I think what you got here is somebody who the term I think is hebephrenic. That he is actually a grown man with a kid's mind who thinks he could be the next Johnny Carson.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amusing in a sense, but it's also very sad because particularly when you know what happens in the rest of the film.
Oh, absolutely. And this film, it came out in '82.
Yeah.
I think was somewhat prescient so far as Scorsese getting into the mind of sort of a media-saturated individuals and the media-saturated society. And I don't know if you're familiar with this concept of LARPing, right? Live action role play.
Yeah.
Right. Do you see that Rupert Pupkin, that sort of persona, that psychology, that behavior is becoming more generalized in 2021? What are your observations?
I'm not sure that it wasn't always around. It's just that maybe we're becoming more aware of it because of the things like the King of Comedy,
Mm-hmm.
Bringing it out, like other movies like The Fan, the ones where you've got the deranged fans that famous stars and have to protect themselves from.
Mm-hmm.
Where you get to the point where you've got Mark David Chapman shooting John Lennon, the deranged fan, and or that guy, the Dimebag Darrell, getting murdered by a fan while on stage with his rock band. So, I think it's.
Well, and this is not to denigrate anybody who is our age and are still really devoted to comics and cartoons and whatever it is, but you see this huge fanaticism now, a lot of energy devoted to superheroes, not just in movies, but in comics and video games. Do you think this is because we were being programmed when we were watching all these TV shows, we didn't realize it. Do you think something similar is happening to this new generation of Rupert Pupkins who are doing live action role play?
Yeah, more and more cosplay and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's entirely possible. I do recall, might have been about 15 years ago, and my son was into comic books at the time, of course. No, make it 20 years ago, because he was 11, 12, 13 years old. And we did happen to go to the Comic-Con down in San Diego one time.
Wow.
And it was kind of fun. It was nice to see, some people had these cased copies of Superman #1 or whatever it was, and we could actually see the genuine covers. And there were some and it was just kind of fun just at comics in general. But then you had a lot of people there who were dressed up in costumes, like superheroes, and it was like that element was creepy to me, and also creepy to my son Lon, who was 13 at the time, or 14, however old he was. And we decided that, and then it wasn't long after that he lost interest in comics, because there was a creepy element to not so much the comics themselves, which were a lot of fun, but to the fandom. And that was our first and last visit to Comic-Con. So, but then this was 20 years ago. So it's obviously that kind of thing, particularly with the bombardment of superhero related films that we have, where during the summer, there's nothing else but superhero films on the screen. So I think, it probably has gotten worse.
Wow. Well, thank you for that anecdote. I know those Comic-Cons are still going on. They're bigger than ever. And I was by that giant convention center down in San Diego where it's held every single year to capacity. And I still was, to check it out. I wanted to go down there and see what all the hubbub was about. But now I'm not so sure I need to or want to. But I do see that even in comics like Super Batgirl or something, like, I can't remember what, the DC and the Marvel, Stan Lee, all these franchises that weren't a franchise when we were coming up.
Right.
But they became corporate, they became infiltrated. So now I see, Batgirl or something coming out to someone else. Say, listen, I'm gay, I'm lesbian.
Right.
And it's becoming more overt. Just you were alluding to Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert and all these other characters who are not doing comedy anymore. They're propagandizing.
Yeah,
it's a similarity there.
Yeah, all woke culture.
What is it called?
Woke. It's the woke.
Oh, woke. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And I assume you're not a big fan of woke culture.
That's a fair assumption.
Okay. Well, let's move to the next clip. And this is the last one that I'll do here. And this is from the great Stanley Kubrick film, The Shining. And again, this is another example of how one particular, uber artist, Stanley Kubrick, like he's up there with Scorsese, how he understands the whole Johnny Carson Tonight Show phenomenology, okay, if you want to put it that way. So, ladies and gentlemen, the classic scene from The Shining.
Little pigs, let me come in. Not by the hair on your chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in. Here's Johnny.
There you have it. Howard, your comments as a former habitué of the Wilshire Theater in Fullerton, California.
That's right. I think there was just probably a lot of Johnny Carson references. The one that immediately comes to mind is in Woody Allen's film Annie Hall, and he plays this Woody Allen type character named Alvy Singer. and he's standing outside a theater waiting for Annie to show up so they can go in and see the film that they're waiting to see. And he's standing out in front of the theater, and these couple of these guys walk up to him. They walk past him. They look at him. They walk past him, look at him, and finally say, "Were you ever on Johnny Carson?" And he said, "No. Yeah, a couple of times." "Hey, and your name?" "Alvy Singer." "Hey, it's Alvy Singer. He was on Johnny Carson. Hey, come on over here, take a look. Alvy Singer. He was on Johnny Carson." So I'm sure there were probably a lot more movies that we could name, but that one immediately comes to mind after watching this. So yeah, Carson was definitely a major part of the culture.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think Johnny Carson, or did you ever read any interviews where Johnny Carson referenced the fact that he had become a meta figure? Not just Johnny Carson, he became a meta character in the popular culture. Do you think he was aware of it?
Not that I've known. I mean, I don't know anything about that. It's a territory I haven't really explored.
Okay. And do you still live near the Wilshire Theater? Do you not? Up by...
I do. Yeah, I live in Fullerton. So, but the Wilshire Theater is long gone. It's apartments there now.
Okay. All right. Let me just conclude here with that, because I don't want to end on a dark, depressing note on our beloved Johnny Carson. Definitely. Let's take it back where we started it, ladies and gentlemen, at the top of the hour with that classic routine that Howard L. Wilson referred to earlier, the Karnak the Magnificent skit. Here we go. This is it, ladies and gentlemen.
With a gobble gobble here and a gobble gobble there.
With a gobble gobble here and a gobble gobble there.
How do you raise the bid at a turkey auction? Ooh.
Want to give number 2 a whack?
Ovaltine.
Ovaltine.
Describe Oprah Winfrey in high school. Hasbro.
Hasbro.
How does Tito Jackson get work? Short stack. Name the host of Unsolved Midget Mysteries. Robin Hood, Dead Again, Thelma and Louise. Describe the last 800 years of Shirley MacLaine. Wake up and smell the coffee.
Wake up and smell the coffee.
What do you do after a one-night stand with Mrs. Olson? Jump down, turn around, and pick a bale of cotton. What's the last thing to do with a live grenade in your mouth? Spam and Jim Baker. Name 2 things that'll be in the can for the next 18 years. Godzilla, Rodan, New York City. Name 3 big Japanese things. Bungee diving and a date with Geraldo. Name 2 things that end with a jerk on your leg. Que sera, sera. Name the sound of someone sawing through a Kmart. Hop sing.
Hop sing. Thank you.
Name a prison for one-legged guys.
This could be historic. I hold in my hand what may very well be the last of the last envelope.
May your proctologist be a frustrated concert trombonist. Tommy Lasorda, Roger Ebert, Marla Maples. Name someone who's butted it up, someone who's plumping the rump, and someone who's dumped a trump.
There you go, Howard.
Those were good. About half of those you wouldn't even be able to get on the air today. The one about Oprah Winfrey, the one about the midget. And it was interesting that there would be a reference to Trump years before he became president, because he was already in the media a long time before that. So it's
Howard, you think we're being prepped by him being put in these little sort of seemingly random references in the culture?
No.
Okay.
It just happened that way.
Oh, no. Yeah, well, he was also a TV character in his own right, Donald Trump, before then. Maybe that's the Rupert Pupkin route to becoming the U.S. president. I don't know. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's the flavor of the great Carson. He's noted as saying that his whole act, his whole comedic sense was based upon timing. It's all in the timing, the slow burn, the reaction, the response to the audience, right? It's all in the timing. Speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the conclusion of our show with a special guest, Howard L. Wilson. If you enjoyed it, please make a comment below. If you really, really want him back at a future date where we can talk about underground comics or some aspect of the 1960s or 70s or music, then make that request below and we'll have him back in a future date. But Howard, I just want to tell you, it's been wonderful talking about Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show, and especially in the context of our own myth-spent youth or young adulthood, whatever the case may be. Do you have some closing comment?
It goes from myth-spent youth into young adulthood. Nope. I'm very grateful to be on your show, and I look forward to getting sufficient positive reaction that you'll invite me back.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you're accepting in advance. Any projects that you have, social media sites that we should know about, Patreon accounts that we can donate to, Howard?
Not today, but maybe on my next visit.
The next time you come, we'll have it all ready, and we'll get you going on that.
Excellent.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're right at the top of the hour, just as promised. I want to again thank, as much as I can, my dear friend Howard L. Wilson. Please watch us tonight at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern time for the Thursday trio. John O'Loughlin, the great George Webb will be live in just 1 hour. Howard, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.